Get ready. You're listening to Give God 90 live.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Give God 90. We are live on a Thursday night as soon as I get everything squared away here, and I think all the buttons are pushed in the right direction. My name is Jerry Mitchell, and my wife Myra hosts for you live on Thursday night Give God 90, live on Facebook, right? Because there we are, right there.
Hi.
Live on Spreaker, which means we are also live on Google, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and a few others. So we are out there doing our thing, and it's actually going out free. Nobody has to pay to sign into this. And there are places that make you pay to do this. So we're putting this out there because, well, quite honestly, nobody paid to watch us anyway. It's that simple. Hi, Pam. Glad to see you.
Pam.
You are going to be particularly interested in part of this tonight. Trust me. Before we get started on what I want to talk about with oh, you're watching too. Good. with Job chapter 1. Want to remind everybody about the website. A lot of people have been going to the website. Whenever you're listening to this, wherever in the world you happen to be listening to this, you can go to givegod90.com, where you get all kinds of neat stuff, and a lot of people do. And that looks like Sean's joining. Hey, Sean.
Hi,
Glad to have you
Sean.
with us. And we thank everybody that goes to the website and supports everything we do there. It is great to have everybody doing that. Actually, I'm kind of overwhelmed and humbled at the same time that everybody's doing that. It makes me kind of feel good. The other thing, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the upcoming separation for the United Methodist Church. I have actually had conversation in the last couple of weeks with people who are heavily involved in the United Methodist Church on several different levels, and it is kind of a weird thing. The church itself, the Worldwide Methodist Church, is not really concerned with this group of people that are wanting to separate, calling themselves traditionalists, because apparently that's going to be their name, that they think that's going to be their name when they separate, is you're going to have the United Methodist Church and you're going to have the Traditionalist Methodist Church, which are anything but traditional. Yeah. So the way this is going to play out is going to be interesting. You're going to see several different things and different ways of people doing things and going places where you never thought they'd be. Hey, Francisco's joined us. Glad to see you. And Jay's on Spreaker. That's cool.
Hi, Jay, Tina, Carol. This is awesome.
Yeah, it is.
Thanks, everybody.
We the United Methodist Church is kind of interesting situation because of it's so huge and what's going on with it. The problem is the group that's breaking off, and there has always been a way for a particular Methodist church, if they wanted to pull away from the denomination, they could leave. All they had to do was basically buy their way out. And what's going on now is they don't want to buy their way out anymore. They want to leave the denomination because they don't agree with what the denomination's saying. But at the same time, they want to take everything that, they don't own. What most people don't know is that in the Methodist church system, the local church doesn't own the building or any property, any assets. If somebody donates them a piano, they don't even own the piano. It's kept in trust for the United Methodist Church as a whole. So if they wanted to leave the denomination, they can just lock the door behind them. Last one out, turn out the lights kind of a thing. But what's going on with this situation is they want to take the property with them and make a big political statement at the same time. That's fine. It's up to them, but it will affect people other than United Methodists. Trust me on this. In one way or another, it's going to affect your charitable donations, the way those are calculated, and it will probably have an effect on the way pastors in some states have to be licensed and registered. So that is going to be something to watch. It's going to be interesting what happens in April and May with the United Methodist Church. It really is. I hate to see it happen, but if and I'm going to say this, if the United Methodist Church body as a whole would have simply said, no, you can't do that, we're taking a stand, because what these traditionalists are doing is they're going to actually be in opposition to Scripture and their Creator. Not a good position to be in at all. When Bible's very clear and says, this is a line you don't cross, it's not a good idea to cross that line. It just shouldn't be happening. J.L. Spreaker says it's about the money for sure, and Jay, you are absolutely right. They don't want to lose what they think they have invested. Sad. But and the big problem. The big problem is the average person who attends a Methodist church doesn't realize the way this has to happen and the way it's or why it's happening. The real thing's just not trickling down to these folks, and it's sad. With all the news media we have today and all the ways we have to communicate, the average person who walks into a Methodist church on a Sunday morning or a Saturday night, as the case may be, in some cases may be, they don't realize what's going on around them, and that is just truly sad. Okay. And the Lord asked Satan, "Where have you come from?" Oh my, what a way to start. This is something I mentioned in a podcast, and I don't remember which one, about how the transcript of this conversation goes and why it was so important. And I've had a couple of people ask me about that, and then was something somebody else wanted me to look at. This particular thing came up again, and I said, well, when all of that happens, it's probably a good idea if I address what's going on. Because if you don't, and I hate to say it this way, if you just read over this, you don't get it. And even if you read it in depth, it's kind of hard to get. But if you want to open your Bible to Job chapter 1, we're going to look at verses 6 and 7 specifically, near the beginning. You got it?
No. I'm getting there.
It's marked. Trust me. I saw it in there. Verses 6 and 7 of Job chapter 1. I'd help you, but I don't have my glasses on. Actually, it starts over here.
I was going to say, wait a minute.
There's a short commentary in the Tree of Life Bible, and that's where she was looking. Never mind the silence. It's all good.
Don't see.
Over here in
5 and
6.
6.
6 and 7.
Okay. One day the Son of God came to present themselves before Adonai, and Satan also came with them. Adonai said to Satan, "Where have you come from?" The Satan responded to Adonai and said, "From roaming the earth and from walking on it."
Okay. Let's start with the answer to the question. From roaming the earth and walking on it. Does that sound like the same thing?
Yes.
It does, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. But the problem is it doesn't say that when you read it in the original language. King James actually uses the word to and fro, right? I just been going to and fro. Like, no big deal. I've just been going to and fro and walking around, and it's all good. We'll get to more on that in a minute. The where they get the to and the fro or the roaming the earth comes from the Hebrew word, and it's Strong's number 7751. The root word is actually shoot. Shin, Vav, Tev. 3 simple letters, but those 3 simple letters aren't that simple. There are words in English that, depending on the way you use them in the sentence, mean different things. Can you think of any?
Back.
Back is very good. Thank you. And Ken Ham from Answers in Genesis uses the example of back. I don't think he uses all the examples, but he does it very well when he's talking about the Hebrew day yom, meaning a 24-hour period of time in Genesis chapter 1. Now, in Genesis chapter 1, we have to realize that a day, a 24-hour day, separated light from dark, actually started before the sun was created. S-U-N. Right? Mm-hmm. Before the stars were created, before the moon was created. This 24-hour period of time was set in place before sunlight. So there was a period of time, a light and period of darkness. I could go for a long time on that, but I don't have time to get into all that. But he's using the example of a day being 24-hour period in Genesis chapter 1 as compared to a day of the day of the Lord, Yom Yehovah. So we look at that and we say, yeah, well, a day can mean 24 hours. A day can mean a time. A day can mean a specific day. A day can mean all kinds of things. You can have a work day, right? Mm-hmm. That's one English word and Hebrew word that has many different connotations depending on what you're talking about. But then we look at the English word back. Now, let's think for a minute. I could have been working in the backyard today and then come back inside the house, right? There's two ways. From there, I could maybe realize that my back is sore from being in the backyard all day before I came back inside the house. So I'm going to sit down and rest my sore back against the back of a chair, which is kind of odd because it's really the front of the chair, right? Mm-hmm. It'd be kind of hard to sit on the chair and then rest your back on the back. So you see that there's many, many, many different ways we can use the word back. This particular Hebrew word is the same way. Depending on the way it's conjugated in Hebrew, depending on the context of the sentence, and depending on the nouns that are associated with it. All right? So, now that I have all of that just as clear as mud, right?
Clear as mud.
I've said all of that to say that this word can, depending on the context, be used different ways. A lot of times, what people will look at this word and say, because the Strong's definition says that it's moving about or covering an area, like you're covering the earth. But it can also mean to row. It can also mean a boat oar, depending on the way it's used. It can also mean to whip. It can also, it has just several kind of weird meanings, but it all comes from the action that's associated with the word to row, right? Mm-hmm. So, because when you're rowing, you're kind of doing that whipping motion with your hands when you got the oars. Sometimes you can row in a very orderly fashion. People who have just starting out with a rowboat or a canoe, they paddle a canoe kind of funny, and it'll go in circles. Sometimes it's chaos, it's calamity, right? Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of things associated with this word. And when we actually get into Job chapter 1, this word actually means, well, we think it means to move swiftly. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Because sometimes when you row, you're fast because it's associated with this whipping, scourging action. It's associated with all kinds of those things. And because he's already said that he's been walking on the earth. Mm-hmm. So it's not like he's been walking on the earth and examining it, right? He's just been down there and he's been moving around. The other thing it could be is he's been down here making trouble, causing some type of calamity, because that is another variation of this word. Jay on Spreaker just said, Tina's sitting here rowing. I kind of, I can see that, okay? I have that picture in my mind. So we have these variations of this particular word. Now let's look at something really drastic, all right? We'll go back to the question. And here is the question where I say that God is a lawyer, because when you're in court, a lawyer never asks a question he doesn't know the answer to, right?
Right.
Now, that might sound a little funny, but here come this group of divine beings. Satan happens to be among them. And the Almighty points him out and says, wait a minute, where have you come from? Well, not quite. The Almighty singles him out as he's coming across the throne room floor. This is a transcript of a conversation in the throne room in heaven. The Almighty gives him the look. Where have you come from? Very formal, very dedicated, very demanding question in this situation. Have you ever been under somebody's authority and you've done something and word gets back? Maybe it's to mom and dad. Maybe it's to a spouse. Word gets back to them, you might have been somewhere you shouldn't have been, or you've been doing something you shouldn't have been doing. And you walk in and the question is, where have you been? What have you been doing? Same logic, same principle in this conversation, in this transcript. The answer displays something we would only expect from a rebellious child, I guess is a good way to describe this. Instead of, and the King James puts it, from going to and fro on the earth and walking upon it. No, it's not that poetic type thing that the King James wants to bring out. Here is a rebellious child giving a facetious answer to the Almighty, where he says, oh, I've just been walking around, It was just a quick walk through the earth. I'm okay. Don't worry about it. There's nothing to see here. Maybe, you could also input there, well, I've just been causing a little trouble down yonder. Don't worry about it. It's not up to you. It's not up to you. That rebellious, slap in the face, facetious, smart aleck answer that all parents just want to reach out and slap the slobber out of those youngins that do that. And I can imagine there's a few spouses that when they come home and maybe supper's been ready and the wife's standing there over the trash can ready to scrape it in the trash, where have you been? We've never had that problem because, the kind of work we always do, you never knew when each other was coming home. So that was never a
Your
big...
plates maybe
that was never a big thing. So what we have here is the Almighty has already known where the devil he was, right? And I still like that joke. I'm sorry, I like that joke. She knows, or he knows where he was. My mind's going back to the married couple. The Almighty knows where Satan's been. He knows what he's been doing. Words, already gotten back to the throne room. Where have you been? He's already got the scenario laid out where he's going to suggest Job to Satan. And people say, oh, that's terrible. Well, no, it's not terrible at all. Because Job was a very wealthy individual. I mean, he had a lot going on for him. He was also very faithful, and he trusted the Almighty explicitly.
Yes,
but more importantly, God trusted Job explicitly. He trusted Job well enough that he was willing to say, Satan, why don't you go look at Job? Check Job out. I bet Job will stay faithful no matter what, because the Almighty understood the commitment that was in Job's heart. The Almighty already understood what was going on. He suggested Job because Job was going to be the one to slap Satan back in the face when Job stayed faithful. And that's exactly what Job did. This question and answer holds so much information, and we read over it and we say, well, that just doesn't make sense. But even if you stop and think about it, even the way it's written in English, if you knew that this was just a facetious answer, and in some translations actually kind of allude to that. There's one that says, "Oh, I've just been running to and fro and walking around." That is pretty close to the answer that the Almighty got, really, because what He's got going on here is the good Almighty Father. Where have you been? I already know what you've been doing. I already know what your punishment's going to be. And I'm just going to let you dig yourself a little deeper here and see how far you think you have to go. Now, the one thing we have to remember is Satan had every right to be walking on the earth. I mean, basically, Adam and Eve, when they rebelled, they handed him the deed to the land. It's that simple, okay? That scroll we read about in Revelation with the 7 seals wrapped around it, that is the deed to the earth that Adam hands Satan when they ate the fruit, okay? And those seals are what's being stripped off and reversing everything that creation created good, I guess is a good way to say that without having to go into a lot of detail. So what we're seeing is the Almighty says, "Where have you been?" And He waits for the answer, knowing that it's probably going to be a slap in the face. So, the really interesting thing about this too is people don't realize when they read it, they are getting a glimpse of what happens in the throne room. You have this group that's just of divine beings described as the sons of God, right? Because that's what they were. That's what we all are, pretty much, right? Because not only are divine beings described as sons of God, but people are also described as sons of God. Adam himself is described as a son of God. So we see this going on, and we get this glimpse. And it's kind of cool because people don't realize what they're reading. They don't understand that what they're looking at is a conversation between the Creator and the created. I don't know how Job knows this. I'm not sure how we got all of this information, but it doesn't matter because it's here. That part really doesn't matter. It's included in Job. It's how he opens. It's how he describes it. And what's really neat when we think about this is people for a long time, when I was growing up, said, well, we don't really know when Job lived. Well, yeah, we do. He was contemporary with Abraham, probably further north. Not exactly sure where north, but somewhere north of there because he talks about it being cold, right? So it's obviously just after the flood. Same as Abraham, right? At a period of time where we were dealing with the cold weather and a lot of ice and a lot of snow. So that's going on as well. And we see all of these things start to come together. Job gives us insight into a lot of things. It gives us insight into the throne room, and it's one of the most scientific books in Scripture, if you know what you're looking for. If you know what you're looking for. There's things in Job that science has just started to figure out that's out in the universe, where he talks about the stars. Science is just starting to figure out that it's in Job. It's been there all along. For as long as we've had this section of Scripture, people have known what our scientists are just now, what they say they're discovering. Right? Isn't it wonderful that science is finally catching up to God? How about that? I got through that a whole lot quicker than I thought I was going to. Did it make sense?
Yes.
Is there anything I need to... Now you can go present this to somebody else, right?
Sure.
All right. Folks, that really... when I looked at this the first time, I thought, there can't be that much to it. And I keep going back a lot to Job, and regular listeners and readers will know that I use Job a lot as examples because there is just so much information packed into Job, it's ridiculous. You can't read a passage without finding something out. You could say that about the Bible, really, the whole Bible.
Right.
But Job especially, he really gets down to the nitty-gritty about Earth and space science and the way the relationships work. Even the glimpses into the throne room, because Satan goes back and asks God a few times for permission to keep interfering, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but the thing is, we have to, when we start looking at words, when we start studying and looking at words, you can't just take a single definition and say, well, this word means this here, so it must mean that through the entire Bible. If you're not going to take the time to go through a lexicon, concordance, and some other things, you're denying yourself the information you need when you study. Trust me. When you start looking at Hebrew grammar, and you start looking through the lexicon, and you go to the root word, and it says, well, it's this, 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 this. Oh, and by the way, if you use it this way, it can be this, 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 and this. Guess what? You have to trace this stuff out. If you're going to present this to people in a way like I do, not so much like you do, because you kind of stay on that, let's just dance across the surface kind of thing. I dig. I dig, and I say, okay, if I'm going to be able to explain this to somebody so that they can understand it, they have to know that if you pick up a lexicon and you look, this is what you're going to find, especially when you're looking at certain words in detail. One of our listeners, Pam, she'll even take it a step farther, and she will go back to the Paleo, and she will dig out the meaning of the single word, as it was described and defined 3,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. So just because you see a word and you say, oh, well, in Genesis it means this. Well, yeah, it did. But you know what? In Exodus, it might mean something similar, something near it, but it could mean, something not
different.
It could mean, instead of a sore back, it could be the back of the chair. It could be the backyard. Mm-hmm. Instead of a 24-hour day, it could be the day of the Lord.
Right.
You have to look at these things in context, and you have to. Oh, by the way, Pam, if you're not looking at Spreaker, Jay just said on Spreaker that Pam is awesome, and he is absolutely right. She is like the queen of paleo.
She is. She doesn't even need a paper to follow. She just knows
fact,
what it is.
I've got to remember that for Monday night, because I have got to remember to call her the paleo queen from now on. Okay. Folks, that's really all I wanted to say this evening is dig into this stuff. Because if you don't know, you can't learn. Francisco even agrees. I love it. Francisco on Facebook even agrees for the folks listening on Spreaker. Okay. Hopefully that all made sense. If it doesn't make sense, you can message me and ask me to clarify something. I'll be happy to do that. But I think you understand that this conversation, a simple question and answer, we get so much insight from when it comes to the way Hebrew language works. So don't be afraid to dig into it. Don't be afraid of it. Just don't think that because I can open a Strong's Concordance and see, oh, I've got a definition, that's what it is all the time, because that's not the way Hebrew works. Hebrew's written on a way that we not only get certain definitions, we not only get what we see, but we get the nuances of just like in this situation, we get the nuances of that certainty in question, and then we get the flippant answer that Satan gives us back, right? Mm-hmm. That is one of the really special things about Hebrew, because we don't really need that specific detailed written detail like we do in English, right?
Right.
We don't. Hebrew doesn't rely on description. It relies on action, mm-hmm. and that's what we're looking for. So there was a word on my mind that I wanted to use there, and I lost it that fast. I don't know why. Oh well. Anyway, did you have anything you needed to add? No? No? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we certainly appreciate you listening whenever, wherever you're at, especially the live folks and all your wonderful, wonderful comments tonight. We just appreciate it so much when y'all join us and leave comments. Don't forget to, just one word can say it all. You're right, Francisco. We appreciate it.
Everybody needs to stay well out there, too.
Oh, yeah, because you work in the hospital and you have seen flu and you have seen yucky stuff and more flu. So, stay healthy.
Yes.
Okay, here's the commercial. Mm-hmm. If you live the way the Creator designed you to live, it will help you stay healthy. Did you know that? It will. Don't rely on a doctor to get you well. Rely on the Almighty and living the way He designed you to live to keep you healthy to start with so you don't get sick.
That's it.
There's my commercial for the night. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate your time. Thank you so very much. Have a blessed week.